Don't touch grass. This video is going to be a little trippy or choppy because it's off the cuff, it isn't scripted, because this comes from the heart. I've seen a lot of topic and discussion around how people should touch grass. Like, they should not be a basement dweller, they shouldn't go outside, they should live their lives a certain type of way, especially if you're like a male gamer, and there's this stereotypical idea that you're just in the basement and you're some loser and you're some weirdo. And there's another segment of this video that I want to do that's more descriptive, that's going to follow a particular character that embodies this kind of idea. But that one's more for relationships, romantic relationships. But I think it's like a great disservice, right? Because think about it. There are these things that you enjoy that bring a great amount of value and worth and happiness to your life. And people will tell you that you're a loser and that you're a creep and you're this and you're whether or not you have a neck beard, you're this and you're that. These people want you to change, right? But have you never thought about, these are the same people that hated you, and you need to fit and be molded into their image, and in order for you to be a respectable, you know, human being, or to be treated as a respectable human being. It seems like there's a innate contradiction in that. There's this song, and I'm trying to remember it, but it says, "No love from the world. You gave it all to conform to." You can go and leave the safety of your so-called dungeon, if you will, and go out into the world. And by the time you've molded into what they wanted you to be, they've already changed into the next trends and everything. I bring all of this up to say that, like, if you're a guy and you're like, this is why I have so much respect for the hikikomori. Like, society hates you. Society thinks that you're a piece of garbage. And then once you finally get out in there, you think people are going to like you? You think people are going to treat you with respect? Do you think people are going to care about your feelings and your well-being? People, especially guys who have been resigned to this role, right? There has to be an extra level of awareness that one has about social situations, about, how, whether it be male or female, and then classes, and there's so much things that one needs to know in order to integrate into society. And only when you profess all of these things well enough do you have a possibility of being accepted. I hate to bring this up, but it's like this is cancelable stuff. For me, it comes back to the age of consent. The age of consent in many places in the US is 18. And it's presumed that once one hits that age of 18, the knowledge of the universe flows into their mind and they become aware and ready to deal with what the world is and how it operates. But the reality is, if you're a guy who spent all those years holed up, and people could argue that this is a reason why you shouldn't, but if you spend all those years holed up, whether you're 18 or not, you're not going to be prepared for this social climate of society. You're not going to be ready mentally or anything. You're going to go out and you're not going to understand the social nuances that people have spent their entire lives developing. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. If one were to like stay in their own shell, and we have to talk about this too. There's a lot of concept about coming out of one shell, right? But if you've been there the whole time, you haven't been growing and developing these abilities. So your foray into the social scene is probably going to be very rocky. And there's going to be many things that you will have to learn over the course of years. And then no matter how many years go by, so because you didn't pick up these things at a young age, it might be much, much, much more difficult to ever acquire these things. And then again, the social rules of society are constantly changing. But then there's also metas. So like if you spent your, like a long time in your room, and then you see all of these hundreds of videos talking about how you need to um, touch grass and go outside. You know, let me tell you something. The world isn't a place filled with sunshine and rainbows. You especially entering the world at a point where supposedly the knowledge of the universe flowed into your mind at 18, everyone is going to be light years ahead of you. And if you're not passing people's vibe check, it's very possible, if not likely, that you'll be relegated to the individual that people pretend to like but don't really like. I had to read a book for school. It's called Catcher in the Rye. And in that book, people talk about phonies, or Holden Caulfield. He talks about phonies. And the concept of people being phony is often relegated to Japanese culture, right? People love to like own the weebs and say like, oh, if you go to Japan, they're just going to uh, they're not kind, they're nice kind of thing. That's such a common sentiment on the internet. And it's like people are like that here too in America. Like the amount of posts that you see and the amount of people that complain that when someone asks someone else how they're doing, that they don't actually care about how you're doing. They're just playing the social game, right? And you, who hasn't been out in the world or hasn't had those experiences and don't know that most people don't really care about certain things, that they're speaking they're speaking multiple languages, right? These people that play the social game, they get mad if you are honest. And it goes further than that. That's just one example. But even if you did, right? Who wants to play social games with people? People that don't really like you or don't care about you or don't respect you, and at the slightest drop of the hat, they'll abandon you in an instant, right? Who wants to go through that? Nowadays, it's harder than ever to survive and to fulfill one's dreams. A lot of people decry that hard work is just so important, and that the the person on the bottom needs to work infinitely hard, like an asymptote, right? Where the closer you get to what is considered to be what is expected of hard work, you never get to it. You're infinitely far away from, the asymptote, right? It's the closer you get, it gets divided in half, and then it gets infinitely divided. So the closer you get, you still stay in a distance from how hard you have to work. So if you're working, two jobs and going to college and having all the side business, it's like, oh well, someone's going to be, oh well, I work 5 jobs, I work 10 jobs, I sleep 1 hour a day, and that's the narrative. So you have people out in society who, are on the infinite grind trying to get ever closer to that, and They don't care about you. They don't care about, all they care about is the rat race. All they care about is the grind. And if that's what they want to do, that's their prerogative. But then how does it benefit you as an individual, a basement dweller, to come out into society to where everyone else is doing their own thing and they don't care about you or your well-being? And then you open yourself up to be destroyed by society. The idea, this statement, one needs to touch grass, implies that there's this rosy, colorful world out there waiting for you, when there really isn't. And then if you want to be accepted, you have to present a certain way. You have to have the certain appeals to certain people. And then even then it may not matter. In many cases it won't. You have to look a certain way. You have to be of probably the correct demographic, because people will see you and they'll have thoughts about you, right? And some of these things you can change and many of them you can't. And is it really worth it to like take yourself, your once guarded self, who was perfectly content being inside, maybe doing whatever they were doing, and then going home and playing video games or whatever it may be, you know? And sure, maybe society might try and implant this idea of, this idea that you need to belong and that you need to have friends. But the reality is, friends are hard to make, and true friends are even harder to come by. And especially if you're like a socially awkward male, you are viewed as a super weirdo. Like, you might be trying your best to like interact, but people will view that as degenerate and creepy and weird and like perhaps even dangerous. And you'll have an even harder and more difficult, insurmountable obstacle to have to climb over. I do in part speak from experience that I have spent like way too much time trying to get people to like me. People that will take you, they will people let me explain to you the reality, right? People will reach into your chest, right? Like Vegeta, right? They will skewer you inside of your chest. They will open up their hand and they will fire a massive key wave. And then they will go about their business. They'll be fine, right? They've spent many years accumulating dozens of quote unquote friends. You will not be fine. But you would have been fine had you just stayed in your shell. I've met far too many people who, like, they have this idea, right, that people just need to be brought out of their shell. They just need to, integrate into society. They need to go touch grass and everything is fine. Everything is not fine. Many people, there's this interesting contrast between the so-called internet and real life. And there's this argument that people often make that people feel so comfortable saying things online, whereas if they had said it offline, they would have gotten punched in the face. But even if they go online and say things offline, even though they don't say it, they still have the same feeling, right? So the thing is, they will treat you like garbage, but they're not going to overtly treat you that way. And again, if you spent most of your time staying to yourself in your room, it's going to be much, much harder for you to detect these things. And how much of a waste of existence is it to spend your entire life trying to attempt to detect whether or not someone is being genuine and social conventions will prevent most people from having any kind of genuine interaction with you. So now you have to try and decipher whether or not someone is being genuine, and they'll never say it. They'll never say it. But the reality is, from what I've learned, it may not even be possible to like understand what someone else is feeling. It's interesting that they bring up this issue in one of my favorite anime of all time, or perhaps the favorite anime of all time, which is Kaiji: The Ultimate Survivor. And it's just like, the idea that people, even if they wanted to, cannot convey true meaning, because the meaning of the words that people use is is um is dependent upon the environment that they've lived in and the meaning that those words have, right? Like, I can speak Japanese, so and I can speak English. Well, I'm not completely fluent in Japanese, but I can say, like, apparently, supposedly, it's hard for Japanese people to say "I love you," but I can say it easily because, in my experience, I never like I those words, "aishiteru." I know, forgive my pronunciation, but "aishiteru," like, I haven't those words haven't absorbed meaning for me over my entire life. So when I say it, those words, even though I know what they mean, they don't have the same meaning. So it's easy for me to say it. It's easier for me to say things in Japanese than it is in English, because I haven't spent my entire life accumulating baggage for those words. But yeah, like, so I I don't know why I'm making this video. I don't know if I'm trying to save people. Don't misattribute that I'm a good individual or that I'm wholesome, or I don't know what to say, but I'm so tired of seeing people acting like going out and touching grass and, oh, the world is a good place and people are kind and friendly and loving. And no, people aren't. Maybe some people are nice sometimes to some people, but the world is very cliquish. People are very cliquish. Society is very not understanding. You know, people care about the things they care about, and they want to do the things that they want to do when they want to do them. And in today's current society, where people who are, even going to college and working multiple jobs and have their own side business, they don't care about you. They're not going to stop and be considerate about you. So why would you leave the safety and the comfort of your room and your video games to go out into the world that has nothing but contempt for who you were and who you are, and expect them to treat you with any level of respect? Are they going to say, oh, well, this guy never had. Because as long as you're above the age of 18, you're, are people going to say, well, this person, this individual, never really had those experiences, and he didn't, no, they're going to look at you as weird, as a weirdo, and a creep and a loser. And they're not going to want to be bothered with you. They're going to treat you with disrespect. They're going to pretend to like you, which you're probably not even going to be able to pick that up. If you've really, and I kind of hate to qualify here, because look, I hate to say that I've had some of these experiences, because then people might say, well, those are just your experiences. But everyone, like, who talks about the touching grass always ignores this reality. And me, like, I'm a bit more socially aware than I used to be, but even then, like, I still find that there's things from living, that life, And don't, the thing to take away from this video shouldn't be, well, you should just do it at a young age, because people still play the social games. They still do. It's just you're maybe better at it, if you've been doing it. But I don't want the takeaway to be that you should just integrate earlier, because people will still treat you like garbage, right? It's just worse. And again, there's a character that embodies this completely, and I don't want to cannibalize on my future video. But man, I don't want to cannibalize on it, but I don't know if this helps anyone. I don't know if I'm trying to help anyone. Don't look at me and say, "Oh, this is a good individual who's looking out for his, people who are like him." Don't 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 take it like that. Don't mark me as a good individual. Um, but I'm just saying, like, maybe a brief, like, I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. Like, people will betray you. People will pretend to like you. Um, if you had a significant other, um, cheating is a reality. I think it's, just off the top of my head, I think it's like 50% or so. It's around 50, maybe it's 60 or 40% of relationships just don't work out, or marriages fail. Like, and people, like, I'm just so tired of people acting like, oh, just go outside. Like, I'm not a no lifer like you. I just saw this YouTuber Rhyme Style, and these types of YouTubers have no respect for me. He's like, oh, I haven't played that much of Dragon Ball Z Sparking. I have a life. I touch grass. Yeah, but the reality for many people is they go out and they have these relationships where people don't care about them. They have these fake relationships where people will betray you over anything. People are overly concerned about the grind and the rat race as well. And that's just another possible thing, right? So sometimes it may not even be personal. Or if you're like talking to someone and that person has a significant other, and like, if you're a male and you're talking to a female, like, personally, I would just tell you to just not interact with girls that have boyfriends. I would say that, just don't. And I know it sounds weird, right? But it's something that I've seen happen several times, where, um even if this girl is the coolest girl ever, a guy sees, look at all of the content, right? Like, look at all of the red pill content. And I'm not co-signing on this content. I'm not telling you that this is how it always is. But there's this idea that the girl is cheating on you with, X, Y, or Z. And I've seen this happen before. Think about how many people, they see you talking to their girlfriend, right? And I've seen this guy, and this is the nerdiest guy, right? And even from my perspective, who is quite the, dare I say, nerd, this nasally voice, not whatever, and he's just talking. We're at work, and there's a bunch of people in the break room, and the guy, this girl, her boyfriend, hears her he hears another male voice in the background, and he loses it. It's an argument. And some people will say, well, that's toxic, and some people will say it's not toxic, and it's just, we're literally, it's after work, we're in the break room, there's a bunch of people around, and it's just, God forbid, you start to, and I've had encounters too, where it's like, this girl, you've even known her longer than she's known her boyfriend, and then, every time you're talking with her, the boyfriend comes around and he's eyeing you, and it's just, you know what, it's all right. It's all right. And it's like, why even engage? Like, God forbid you get attached to someone. God forbid that this individual was your lifeline. Now, if you're if you live in isolation and you're used to the darkness, right? This is in the vein of Sasuke and Naruto, where Naruto never had, and sure he wants, right? He wants those relationships, but he's never had them. And if you could be in a point where you've never had them and you're content with that, don't go out into the world. Don't touch grass. People I can't, like, I don't know what to say. But going back to what I was saying before, God forbid that, and it's a non-romantic thing. You don't have the slightest interest in her, but then this person becomes kind of someone that you talk to, and then there's this very aggressive and immense, you know, severance of the relationship, or problems that occur because of the relationship that you would not have had otherwise had you just rejected outside interactions. And it happens with guys too. Like well, maybe before I go on, like I've had, interactions, nothing where I've like cared too much, but, and it's just like, you can have the most innocuous whatever, and then the narrative is like, oh, you were trying to get with her. And that's one of the things that you that you have to get used to as a male, is that anytime you're around a female, people are going to assume that you're trying to smash. And you might think, well, oh no, it's just no, nobody cares, right? And so you're around a girl and she has a boyfriend or she's married, it's going to be a problem. It's probably going to be a problem. There's a chance that it won't be. But when you had the ability to just stay in your room, why would you go into these potentially problematic, likely problematic situations? And it happens the same thing with males too. I've known guys in the past where, you're talking to the guy and he's like, oh, my girlfriend is about to get home. I need to get off the phone because she's going to raise hell when she gets home and she sees me on the phone. And a lot of girls, this is something that I had to learn the hard way. A lot of girls get mad that their boyfriends spend a lot of times with their male friends. And it's not even like a cheating issue. It's not even a cheating thing. I don't know, maybe it's a jealousy thing or whatever. And it's like, you might be okay with your male friend, but there are many reasons that his girlfriend may or may not like you. And if she doesn't like you, your relationship with that guy is over. It's over. He is not going to choose you over his girlfriend. And I think people in society don't know, or they don't care what that does to people who spent most of their lives in isolation, and then they go out into society and then they get dropped over the slightest thing. And sometimes it doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to be something that you said, or maybe you're a little bit too rough around the edges. It could just be jealousy. It could just be, my boyfriend, from the girl's perspective, from the girlfriend's perspective, pays too much time to his male friends. So it's a problem in their relationship. And they're not going to choose you over her. I can't highlight this enough. And look, maybe there are some exceptions out there. I'm not going to completely I'm not going to completely rule out the possibility of any exceptions, but I have to say it. Like, what you're doing, right? If you are a loner and you stay inside and you play games, you're protecting yourself. You're protecting yourself from all of the emotional trauma that society will inevitably bestow upon you. And you are not prepared for it. You're probably not prepared for it. And me, I'm a failure. I'm a failure because my entire life people spent telling me how I need to go out and I need to socialize and I need to make friends. And when you finally do get out there, it's it's a dog eat dog world out there. Like, so many people would be so much better, you know, if people if you just stay to yourself, play your video games, have your hobbies, you know, people don't care about you. I don't know what else to say. So I know what some people are going to say. And this is where we have to talk about toxic positivity. In videos like this, I should bring up toxic positivity in all of my videos. Um, there's always going to be the people who say, well, I had a good experience. And see, the problem with that deals with what someone is trying to prove. So, just because you may have had a good experience, and I'm not going to say that having a good experience, meeting the right people, or having good experiences outside are impossible. I'm not here to say that. But just because someone had a good experience, it does not mean that you are guaranteed a good experience. I am not guaranteeing that you have a bad experience. I'm saying that when people make these and say just touch grass and it'll solve that's the problem with all of these videos. Oh, just do this one thing, it'll solve all your problems. Just exercise, it'll solve all your problems. It'll cure your depression. Just go outside and touch grass and meet people and have a girlfriend and do these things and it'll solve. No. Maybe you get lucky. But in many circumstances, you are not even equipped to go out on that level. Like, you are not competing on the same level as everyone else. So many people, and this could probably be backed up with some level of statistics, like with the chances of cheating or the chances of failed relationships. Like, there'll be that one married couple that's been like married for 40 years, and then it'll be this kind of, oh, well, they did it, so that's guaranteed to happen as long as you. No, that is the statistical anomaly. I don't know the extent that I would say going outside, you know, is going to necessarily, and I know there's going to be people who say that it was maybe the best thing they ever did, and maybe they had that experience, but there's so much wrong with it. There's it is not a guarantee, and I would even argue it's not likely, and many people will mistreat you, especially in today's society. So whenever someone says just go outside and touch grass, don't listen to them. It's a cruel dog eat dog world out there. I probably haven't even covered all the bad things. Like I said, there's another video that may or may not be coming up soon where we're going to use a specific character and we're going to build off of that character. We're going to use that character as an example. I mean, it's one of the great things that I regret in my life as well. When I started learning, again, everybody wants you to conform to whatever the current social landscape is. And that social landscape changes. So by the time you've conformed to that, things have changed. And now you found yourself, because the way it works on some level for many people, and this could depend on things like attachment style, is that like you go out there and you're just not ready for it. You're not ready for everything that the dog eat dog world entails. And I'm not going to say that no one is ever going to be nice, but it's the odds are not great. I don't want to touch on it too much right now, but there's two branches that we're going to talk about. And to some extent we have to temper this with like social media as well. Like, I'm not saying that one should necessarily like that social media, it's a mixed bag, but like when I say like touching grass is not necessarily a good thing, I'm not saying that social media is necessarily a good thing. Things are going to depend, but there's four different branches. We can talk about the whole activities and exercise and things like that. We can talk about girls and like pursuing romantic relationships. We could talk about politics, and we can talk about how the culture surrounding all of these things is inherently not good. Like, all of these things are rife with destruction, the likes by which the average person will never ever bring up. All of them are rife with the possibility of self-destruction. And there's some nuance with that. Nuance that I'm not going to get into with this video. There are two characters. There's one in mind for what it means to like, and like the pitfalls of like romantic relationships. And then there's also the pitfalls of how society attributes the importance of working out, especially for guys. That's and I know people. This is one of those hear me out situations, because saying that, like, everyone is going to be against me, everyone, right? And it's something that, this is a little bit, subscribe. Part of me, you know what? Don't subscribe to my channel. But these are things that I might end up talking about in the future. Some of these videos will be somewhat scripted, as I will be using a character or characters to play off of. But this video had to come from the heart. I can't overstate. I really, really can't overstate. And maybe I'll post the video or the music, where those lyrics are from. No love from the world, you gave it all to conform to. Like, and if you could just kind of develop this tolerance, right, to being like in isolation, it's a very powerful ability. Very powerful. There's a lot of people out there who struggle in those kind of circumstances, who, when they're in their room or alone, or when they retire and they're not working and they have to be alone in their room or just at home, they can't take it. So they go back and they start working again. This is some people, not everyone, but I've encountered individuals like this at work. And oh man, we can talk about, even, let's talk about work, right? Let's talk about work. Let's talk about how today's friend is tomorrow's enemy. How you might be friends with someone, quote unquote, at some point, but then maybe you say something, or maybe something happened, or there's some weird interaction that happens, and now you're like enemies. And now, like, every time you come to work, it's uncomfortable, or 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 you've maybe said too much at some point, and now it can be used against you, or anything really. Like, if people don't know you, they might be they're like I mean, there's a double side to that, where you know people will, in many cases, respect people that they like, and the caveat is that they like, and being liked is in many cases more important than having skill. But if you've been able to survive, you know, by just living in isolation, do not listen to these people to go out and touch grass. You're just opening yourself up to be destroyed by people. That's that's the message of this video. But do let me know what kinds of videos. Like, I am debating talking about those other topics, each of which would deserve their own video. But that's it for now. Yeah, if only, if only, if only, if only I stayed. Well, never mind.